You think you know what we're going to talk about.
But unfortunately, I fell down a damn rabbit hole and I've not gotten out yet.
Knife bros.
I literally Googled Sebastian Stan hands.
But just when you least expect it, we changed the game.
Well, yeah, because like usually in astrology, they would partner up air signs with fire signs.
All right, you can huggle.
Time travel stories and
At the end of the day, only one thing matters. We decide.
Well, we should make it a topic. Unfortunately, I didn't take German in school. I took Spanish and I don't remember any of it.
Three Fates Decide podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Three Fates Decide. My name is Sam, and I am here with my two co-hosts, Mary and Liz. Say hello.
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 And today, we are going to be talking about Star Wars, and we are going to focus on the original trilogy, which is episodes 4, 5, and 6, because anyone who actually knows Star Wars knows it's a lot if we were to go over everything. So we're going to stick to the original 3 movies. The first one came out in 1977, and we're just going to go through these 3 episodes. We'll have more of our own episodes of other trilogies, and then, the Disney Plus series and all that other fun stuff, because as I mentioned, Star Wars is huge. But in case you've never, ever seen a Star Wars film, spoiler alert, though, again, as I mentioned, the first Star Wars movie came out in 77, so I'm hoping that you've seen some Star Wars, because I know they do like to play it on TV occasionally, especially May 4th. So, May the 4th be with you.
I actually had an old school friend of mine get married on May the 4th, just because of Star Wars.
Listen, if I were to get married on May the 4th, it would totally be Star Wars themed. It has to be.
Funny enough, I have a cousin who's actually, her actual birthday is May 4th. Which is
There you go.
Yep.
All right, so quick synopsis. The first film, which is, again, the way that they did this was a little backwards. So the original trilogy is actually episodes 4, 5, and 6 instead of 1, 2, and 3. But episode 4 is called A New Hope. And anyone want to go over the premise?
Yeah.
You want me to do it?
Oh, I got this.
Do it.
The basic premise of the movie is there's a civil war it's a galactic civil war. You have the Empire versus the Rebels, and the Rebels have just stolen the plans for the Death Star.
So Princess Leia, who is
A senator. She's the Imperial senator.
right.
Is what we meet her. She's one of the leaders of the rebellion. She's obtained the schematics, but she gets intercepted, so she puts the schematics into R2-D2. And he gets shot out of her starship with C-3PO onto the desert island of Tatooine, where we meet Luke Skywalker for the very first time. And he finds R2-D2, finds that he finds the holograph of Leia that's saying to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. And it just kind of goes from there. He gets captured, he gets taken, it's just a lot of hell.
All right, so I'll help you out.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So when Luke Skywalker, aka Mark Hamill, and Princess Leia is
the late great Carrie Fisher.
Carrie Fisher, yes. May she rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
But when Luke finds R2-D2, as you mentioned, he sees a holograph recording of Leia asking help from Obi-Wan Kenobi. And so Luke finds Obi-Wan Kenobi and or actually is kind of saved by Obi-Wan Kenobi when he's attacked. But basically he learns about the Jedi Knights and, you know, about everything that's kind of going on, the Force and all that stuff. And believe it or not, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you'll find out later, knows who Luke is. And tells Luke that his father fought with him back at, you know, in the old days with the Clone Wars and all that stuff. So they have to get to Leia to save her. They wind up meeting Han Solo at a bar and are able to get a ride from him and his Wookiee Chewbacca, who's my personal favorite, on Han Solo's ship, the Millennium Falcon. They rescue the princess, or I guess senator, but she's Princess Leia, and are able to bring her back to safety. But, you know, they find out about the Death Star's tractor beam, which is that can destroy planets. In fact, if I recall, it does destroy Princess Leia's home. Correct? I'm right with that.
Yes.
Isn't it like destroy
Yeah.
her planet?
Totally.
Okay.
Yes.
They made her watch it blow up.
Right. Mean. So with the Empire, they're being led by Darth Vader. And well, I guess he's the face of the Empire, because you don't really, you know, he's the only one that talks to the head guy. But the rebels then just go up and they fight, and Luke is actually the one that winds up destroying the Death Star, and he learns, you know, oh my God, yeah. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is with them. Obviously, he is fighting Vader. Vader kills Obi-Wan Kenobi, but then through Obi-Wan's spirit or whatever, he helps Luke use the Force, quote unquote, the Force, which is the term that the Jedis used, to help shoot torpedoes and destroy the Death Star at the end. So it's kind of like the first time Luke uses the Force and kind of understands that he's a lot more powerful than he realizes. And then pretty much at the end, you know, it's a big celebration, and Luke and Han get medals of heroism, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yep.
Wow. Did not think that was going to take that long. It's hard not to, you know, to whatever. But okay, so going back, favorite parts of the first movie.
I don't know, it's so hard just to pick a favorite part because I like the entire damn movie.
Actually,
I
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it was probably Luke finding out that he's about his father and that his father was a Jedi. And just pretty much the whole Obi-Wan storyline that he had with Obi-Wan in the movie was probably most of my favorite.
You know, actually, I was kind of reminded of this, but there was this interview that Mark Hamill actually did, with, I think, with Seth Meyers a while back, and he pointed out something that didn't occur to me until he said this, but he was like pointing out how the dialogue in this particular movie had a lot of really funny lines in it, actually. Like, he pointed out about how when, you know, Luke and Han go rescue Leia's reaction is like, you know, what the hell are you two doing? You came on that thing? That was like kind of her attitude when she saw like the Millennium Falcon, and the two of them, they're like all a complete mess and their plans are like completely chaotic, and she was like, what the hell?
What kind of rescue is this?
I mean, it's like, when you think about it, the conventional storytelling tropes up to that point would have been like, oh, we have to rescue the princess and, be the heroes and do it all like, with, heroic flair and stuff like that. And no, like it's a completely chaotic mess, their whole rescue plan. And also like the fact that, you have these robot characters like R2D2 and C3PO who are like the comedy duo to kind of lighten up some of the scenes a bit.
Yes.
I mean, again, I didn't really think about it at the time when I, the couple times I've seen the movie, but then Mark Hamill points this out in an interview he did, and I was like, wow, you're right. This was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my favorite bit. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, that kind of same. Where I love the dynamic between the three characters. So Leia, Luke, and Han. And I didn't mention this, but Han is played by the great Harrison Ford. But I love the dynamic, especially like as you mentioned, like the part where they go and rescue her and first they kind of think that she's just like a damsel in distress, but she's out there shooting the shooting the stormtroopers and all this stuff and the fact that Luke thinks she's cute and wants to date her or whatever, but and Han thinks she's cute, so there's like the love triangle going on, which as we talk about the other movies you'll kind of learn a little bit more as to why that becomes kind of funny. But so I thought that and I guess whether it's acting choices or the writing or both, I just thought it was great because it really made the movies even more entertaining, the dynamic between the three.
Yeah. I mean, it was good. I mean, anything with Harrison Ford in it, I pretty much like though. So.
Yeah, he's fantastic. It's kind of funny to watch these movies now because back when they first came out, like this was like, the graphics and stuff like that were so amazing for the time. Again, this movie came out May 25th, 1977. And, now being 2021, you watch these movies and you're like, damn, could this get any more fake? But like I still applaud them because for the time they did a fantastic job.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've seen like some of those behind the scenes documentary type things where they point out like quite a few scenes, like especially the space scenes. They were paintings, some of them. Like it's, smaller scale models for some scenes and I'm like, wow, okay, old school special effects worked great.
Yeah. All right. Anything else that we want to add for episode 4, known as A New Hope?
Oh wait, actually there's one small thing. I just thought of it. I thought it was really interesting when I read that the reason why they killed Obi-Wan was because Alec Guinness didn't want to do like the entire movie and have to come back in sequels if there were potentially sequels. Because I guess he just didn't take the whole story very seriously, which to be fair, at the time, there was no reason to take this movie seriously because it's so different from all the other movies that were coming out around the same time period that, why would anybody expect this, what's, theoretically speaking, a very goofy, weird space opera, space western, sci-fi movie seriously? Like, why would you take that seriously at all? And, Alec Guinness and at the time, Alec Guinness was like the best actor really in the whole movie, based off of like the fact that, he had a long acting career and everything. So apparently his wish to like not have to spend, all this time on this movie, they killed off the character when they did. And weirdly enough, it actually turned out to be, it worked pretty well for the rest of the saga, actually, having that happen. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I think I'd heard that before, to be honest with you, a while ago, but I'd forgotten about it.
Yeah, I think this is like one of those like behind the scenes stories that had been going around for a long time. So people who are really interested in this sort of stuff, you'd eventually hear about it.
Um, and I guess the only thing I want, like a little trivia, um, for people. So most people know the phrase "May the Force be with you," and everyone claims that it's Obi-Wan Kenobi that says it, but he actually never says that quote. He says variations, but never that specific line. It's actually Han Solo that says that line toward the end of the movie. So it's pretty funny how people kind of took it and was like, "Oh, Obi-Wan Kenobi said this," and blah blah blah. And it's actually amazing how much ad-libbing the actors did. And there's actually one scene where um Han Solo and Luke Skywalker dress up as stormtroopers with their helmets, and Mark Hamill didn't realize that the cameras were rolling, and he kind of like turned to Harrison Ford and was like, "I can't see anything in this damn helmet." And they thought it was so great they actually kept it in the movie. So that's a little trivia for you. And one last thing. So George Lucas based the character Han Solo off of his friend Francis Ford Coppola. And if you don't know who Francis Ford Coppola is, he is the director of the Godfather saga. So there you go.
Huh. Okay, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Some fun facts of the day.
Yes. Oh, another fun fact is Harrison Ford and George Lucas literally had a handshake deal when he filmed this movie with them. He did it
Oh.
on a handshake
There you go.
that he would get that it would be a good movie and he'd get paid for it.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
He made out, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Because they had worked together on a previous movie, American Graffiti, and they'd become good friends. But that's how they've always done, or they did there for a long time. They did all their movies was with a handshake contract. Obviously not now because of the society we live in, but
There you go.
it's a little fun fact I found out the other day when I was reading up on something, and it was turned out, and it was about Harrison Ford. Ended up going, I kind of went down a rabbit hole. Looking up one thing and it ended up down this other rabbit hole. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But I digress. On to the next movie.
Well, real quick, last one is apparently in 2017, Mark Hamill admitted that he and Carrie Fisher used to make out a lot because they were both attracted to each other, but they mutually decided not to consummate their affair and become like a thing. So that sexual tension that's in there was real. All right, moving on to the next one, episode 5, known as The Empire Strikes Back.
Yes. And this movie came out in 1980 as it's the second installment, obviously. It's technically the 5th episode of what's known as the Skywalker saga. And this movie is set 3 years later after they've destroyed the Death Star. Vader is looking for the rebels. He sends out probes. They find the rebel base on the planet of Hoth, which is known as an ice planet. So it's literally covered in ice. The rebels find the probe. Luke goes out to investigate it. He's captured by what's known as a wampa. Remember what that is, to be honest. Is that like the Yeti thing?
Yes, I believe so.
I think that was the Yeti thing. But he escapes, but Hoth is such a cold planet, he's getting hypothermic. But the Force spirit of Obi-Wan tells him before he before he almost succumbs to the hypothermia, to go to Dagobah and find Yoda. Han finds Luke and keeps him protected until the next morning when they can finally get back to the base. But before they can get back to the base and get everybody out of the base and off the base, the Empire finds them and sends an attack using the at walkers. Those big metal walker things. Those things were creepy to me when I was a kid. And I watched them. They were a little creepy. I was like, okay, that's a little weird. But they do get everybody off the base. Mostly off the base. Han and Leia escape with C-3PO and Chewbacca on the Falcon, but their hyperdrive malfunctions, so they're having to hide in an asteroid field. And I remember that because they were so worried about getting hit by the asteroids. Meanwhile, Luke with R2-D2 goes to Dagobah, but he crash lands on Dagobah. He finds Yoda, who eventually agrees to mentor him to being a Jedi. I'm trying to read it and remember it all and try to put it a little easier. So basically, while Luke is training with Yoda, Han is trying to get away from bounty hunters, including Boba Fett, but we also find Lando Calrissian. But Vader finds Han and tries to use them to get Luke because he wants to turn Luke to the dark side. And he runs to rescue everybody because he's experiences a premonition of everybody in pain and being hurt. Vader wants to hold Luke in suspended animation. However, he does this to Han to see if it works. And he imprisons him in carbonite. And then Han is given to Boba Fett, who gives him to Jabba the Hutt, which kind of sucks. But Lando frees Leia and Chewie and gets them out. Then Luke comes and he finds Vader. They go into a lightsaber duel. Vader chops off his hand, tries to get him to help overthrow the Emperor. Luke says no, believing Vader to be his father's murderer. But we find out that Darth Vader is actually Luke's father. But Luke is unconvinced, I will say. So he basically tries to get away. He drops into an air shaft and he's ejected out into the city, well, into space, basically. But he does get out. He does reach out to Leia through the Force, and she does come back to rescue him. But they almost get caught again by Vader until the hyperdrive gets repaired, and then they were able to escape. And it ends with basically Luke in the aboard the Rebels fleet. His hand is replaced with a robotic prosthesis, and they watch as Lando and Chewbacca leave on the Falcon to go find Han Solo, and that's where the movie ends. So we don't know what happens until the next movie of anything.
Yeah. A lot of stuff happens in that movie. It's actually my favorite of the three.
Yeah. I would probably have to say mine too.
Actually, I think a lot of people felt like this is the best movie out of all of
because
them.
it's so much happens. So, I mean, obviously, like, you meet Yoda and you see Luke, finally trying to follow in his father's footsteps, become a Jedi. He is very similar to his father in terms of his emotions, which got his father in trouble. But so Yoda's like trying to teach him like don't use your emotions, like Jedis don't use emotion because it can lead to the dark side. And when Luke decides to leave, like Yoda, tries to tell him like it's not good for him to leave, like it's not going to work out well, whatever, but he decides to leave anyway. And then um this is also like obviously you find out that Vader is Luke's father, which by the way, the Luke I am your father is not what is said in the movie. Just so you know, that is not the true quote. Um but this is also where you learn that Luke and Leia have a connection through the Force. And you don't know what it is yet, but you know that there's a connection through the Force because they're able to communicate without like seeing each other or speaking to each other. So that's when you kind of realize, okay, like there's something up between the two of them. And then obviously my personal favorite part is when Han is getting frozen into the carbonite and Leia goes, I love you, and his response is, I know. Freaking Han Solo. Such a cocky
Yeah.
ass.
And that line was actually ad-libbed.
I'm sure it
Harrison
was.
He was supposed to say, I think he was actually supposed to say, I love you too. But he's like, Han would never actually say that.
Yeah, he was just like, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly he knows his character better.
Oh,
Yes.
God. So,
Yeah.
what about you guys? What you guys like about it?
I guess like what I liked about it was aside from like how it was pretty action packed and a lot of really interesting things happen, I think what I enjoyed about it the most is that it really fleshed out the characters more. Like you find out more about all these different people that you see in this movie. And it really felt like there was progression with Luke's journey from, this like relatively naive country boy in the first movie, and now he's on his way to being a Jedi. But at the same time, it's not smooth sailing either because he has to confront, all sorts of problems along the way, including discovering that one of your enemies is actually your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sort of thing.
Sorry.
I was like, what is that?
My phone. But for me, God, it's just such a good movie. I think it's probably for me what I really, really enjoyed was the actual fight between Luke and Vader. And not so much that he learns that Vader's his father, but it's just that entire sequence that is just so well shot for the 80s, for 1980. Well, I mean, like probably 79 actually when they shot it, but it's just I don't know. I think that's probably my favorite.
So, okay, so one piece of trivia that I actually saw is true. Brought up in another movie. So Darth Vader, if you translate it in German, it is actually Dark Father. That is true. It was mentioned in Pitch Perfect, but that is actually true. Darth Vader translates to Dark Father in German. So fun fact, they were right.
I'm not sure like if this is 100% true. I mean, like maybe somebody can correct this, but I thought I heard or read somewhere that Han getting frozen by the carbonite, I heard that it was Harrison who suggested that because of the fact that like he was it's a bit like with Alec Guinness where he was like, I'm not sure if I want to keep doing like, more movies or whatever, he kind of had it in his head that eventually Han was gonna die. So yeah, so that's what I heard is like that's kind of the inspiration of like why that happened to Han in the movie. Because, like, because potentially, he could have been killed off. So
Interesting. I wonder if that's real. Does anyone listening know if that's real? If it is, let us know, because I want to know now.
Yes.
I'm trying to think. There was something else. Okay, so this is based off another interview that Mark Hamill did when he was doing, like one of those like talk show interviews things, but he actually explained the whole reveal about, Darth Vader being Luke's father was that initially only George Lucas and the director Irvin Kershner were aware of this fact. And so Irvin Kershner actually visited Mark in his trailer and said, okay, I'm about to tell you something. It's a really huge secret, okay? George Lucas is the only other person who knows about this. So once I tell you this information, if it leaks, we'll know you're the one who said this and not anybody else, okay? And that's when he told Mark that this reveal, because in the official script that everybody in the cast and crew had access to, the revelation written in there was that Darth Vader tells Luke that Obi-Wan Kenobi was the one who killed his father. And then that's when, Luke is supposed to like have that reaction like, no, it's not possible. It's not true. Blah, blah, blah. But then in this private conversation in the trailer, that's when Irvin Kershner gave him another sheet of paper that had the real dialogue that James Earl Jones was going to read, in the voiceover booth, which is that, I am your father. So I thought that was really interesting. And poor Mark Hamill had to keep this fact a complete secret from everybody for like apparently over a year in between when they filmed this and when the movie actually came out in theaters.
Yeah, I actually just read something that Harrison Ford didn't find out about the reveal until like the premiere. And
Yes.
when the reveal happened, he leaned over to Mark Hamill and was like, "I'm sorry, I'm cursing here, but he's like, you didn't fucking tell me that, kid."
Yes, it was in the same interview. It was I think it was with Graham Norton actually. That
Love that show.
Yeah, it was like when when they were promoting what was I forget what that movie's called, episode 8. Something
The Last Jedi.
Right. It was for it was like when they were promoting Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was really interesting. But it makes sense because, I mean back then like you didn't have the internet. So
Right.
But
yeah,
at the same
you could actually keep secrets.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Personally, I think they did a better job of doing. Personally, I think this method of keeping a secret is way better than what the Marvel actors had to deal with, or the Game of Thrones actors had to deal with. It's like, why can't you just have private conversations and give them like the special sheet of paper with the real dialogue on it? Like that would have been easier, honestly.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's all I have in terms of interesting trivia tidbits.
All right. So let's go to episode 6, the last of the original trilogy, known as Return of the Jedi. I like this movie too. Honestly, I like all 3, but I think The Empire Strikes Back and this one are my favorite.
Yeah. I think I agree with you on that one.
Yeah. Do you want me to do this one?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So this takes place a year after. So when after Han Solo was frozen in the carbonite, he hit his, I guess, block of carbonite. C-3PO and R2-D2 are sent to Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. And Luke goes to rescue Han. And Princess Leia goes, and she's disguised as a bounty hunter, and Lando is also involved. It's like this whole big plan, and they're pretending to like bring Chewbacca in, and have, give him over to Jabba the Hutt. Once Chewbacca's taken, he's able to unfreeze Han. Or while he was unfreezing Han, he was caught, excuse me. So basically, Luke is trying to bargain with Jabba, but Jabba drops him through this trap door to be eaten by his, I guess, monster called the Rancor, but Luke is able to kill it. He's able to basically save everybody. There's a whole big scene, but I'm not going to go into it too much. But all I'm going to say is a lot of guys liked Princess Leia's outfit during that whole scene. If you haven't seen it yet and you're a dude, I'm sure you'll like it. Whatever. She's in like a bikini thing.
Yeah, I could so say what I'm thinking, but I won't.
Yeah. But so basically they all get away. And they go back to the Rebel Alliance, and Luke goes back to Yoda. And when he gets there, he finds out Yoda's actually dying. Yoda does confirm that Darth Vader was Luke's father, known as Anakin Skywalker, and that there is another Skywalker out there. His death, basically, he vanishes. So, then Obi-Wan's spirit comes and pretty much tells Luke that Leia is his twin sister. So if you recall, when I was talking about the last movie, I mentioned that there's a connection between them, and it's because they are actually twins. They are twin siblings, and they can use the Force with each other. And the reason why they have that power is because their father was a very powerful Jedi who then became Darth Vader. And basically Obi-Wan tells Luke he has to face Vader again, and he has to, and that's how he's going to finish his training and defeat the Empire. Meanwhile, the Empire is constructing a second Death Star under the supervision of the actual Emperor. And it's protected by like this energy shield, and Han is selected to lead a strike team that includes Luke and Leia and Chewbacca to destroy the shield, and allow the Rebel fleet to destroy the Death Star. They wind up on, anyway, they're on, I don't know if it's a moon or a planet, Endor, where they meet the Ewoks, which are so freaking cute. They're like little teddy bears.
Yes, but their moon is it's a moon. Force moon.
It is a moon. Okay, yeah.
Yes, it is a moon.
But Luke does tell Leia that she is his sister, that Vader is their father, and basically tells her everything. And he basically says he has to do this himself. So he goes up to meet Vader, basically, and Vader takes him to the Emperor, whose purpose is to basically, the Emperor turned Vader to the dark side. He now wants to turn Luke to the dark side. And so while Luke's busy dealing with the Emperor and Vader, his friends and the Rebel fleet are all going into a trap, basically, that none of them realize, but they're all captured by the Imperial forces. But the Ewoks help out and are able to infiltrate the generator. And once they're able to do that, then the Rebel assault on the second Death Star starts, even though the shield is still active. So it's a big old battle. The Emperor meanwhile, as I mentioned, is trying to convince Luke and wants Luke to kill Vader and to give into his anger and to basically become what his father was. But basically, long story short, Luke refuses, says that he's going to stick with, the Force, and is able to, or is being then electrocuted by the Emperor. And Vader can't stand seeing his son die and picks up the Emperor and throws him into the reactor shaft to his death and gets electrocuted in the process. So he's dying. So while the fight's going on, they get the shield down, they start destroying the Death Star. Luke is trying to save his father, but he dies, unfortunately. But Luke is able to get out before they're able to destroy the Death Star. And then there's a whole big celebration at the end. Han thinks Leia's in love with Luke, but Leia does tell Han that Luke is her brother. So he's very happy. He gets the girl at the end. Woohoo! And then Luke comes and celebrates. And my one thing that kind of annoyed me is that originally, when this movie aired, or, was shown, at the end, the three spirits show themselves to Luke. And one is Obi-Wan, one is Yoda, and one is Anakin Skywalker. And originally, it was the actor who was chosen to play Anakin Skywalker. That's really his only scene, maybe his second scene, because before he dies, Luke does take off the mask, and so that's the only other time you see him. After the prequel trilogy came out, they removed that guy from the ending scene where he's the spirit and put Hayden Christensen, who plays Anakin Skywalker in the prequel sequel, and put him in this movie. And I was like, that's so mean. The poor guy who has played this role and had his, had this one scene, they just took him out like it was nothing. I just felt so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Although to be honest with you, I think,
it made sense, but still.
Well, actually, in a way, it doesn't make any sense to replace him with Hayden Christensen, because the version of because that's not who Luke saw
right
when he took off the mask. So it's why would he ever recognize a younger version of his father like that? That doesn't make any sense. It's not like you changed out Alec Guinness and put, Ewan McGregor in his place.
Right, and that's the whole thing. And my guess is that it's more for the audience as opposed to the movie, which is why I didn't necessarily like that, because you said, he didn't know what his father looked like as a kid, when he was younger. So how would he know that represents his father? So I feel it was more for the audience, because we know who Anakin Skywalker is if we've seen the prequel trilogy, and not necessarily for the movie. So that was my big thing that annoyed me with that whole thing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. I was not happy about the fact that they changed who he was in the very end of a movie that was made in 1983. It's it doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah. And apparently Hayden Christensen mentioned he didn't know that George Lucas was going to do that, because he said that if he knew, he would have played the scene totally different. So he had no idea until it happened. But what are our favorite moments?
I don't know. I think for me, it'd probably have to be the whole Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. I kind of like I just kind of like that. Not so much Princess Leia's outfit. That was just that's just not my thing. But the whole, just the tension, and they're caught and he's trying to get away and he has to rescue everybody, and they're on their way to go be eaten by something else, and I just like that whole thing.
Yeah, no, that was a really good scene. It was a great way to start the last movie, that's for sure. Definitely jump right into the action with that one.
Yes.
I guess for me, my favorite part was actually the final bits where Luke and Vader basically reconciled towards the end of the movie. I mean, it in a way, like, Luke was always like, I think Luke kind of had this notion of who his father was based off of the stories that, his uncle told him when he was younger. And then like references to him from like Obi-Wan made him imagine his father as being this amazing heroic person. And then his shock in the second in episode 5, when he finds out that, oh my god, this guy that we're fighting against, he's actually my father. And then towards the end of this movie, when Darth Vader turns away from the dark side for a bit to out of love for his son, wanting to save him, it in a way, it kind of like, well, it doesn't completely erase who, all the terrible things that Vader had done up to this point, but in a way it kind of brings a little closure to, who is, this image of who his father is, that like, what his father towards the end does actually have some bit of good in him, and it's his, I guess, in a way, his own way of kind of apologizing or, making amends for some of what he did.
Yeah.
So that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we'll kind of get into it more with the next time we do an episode about the prequel trilogy. But yeah, no, that is actually, nice, that they kind of got that closure, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a favorite part. I like the Ewoks. I just think they're cute and cuddly.
Yeah, they're cute and cuddly, but they're
They could be
vicious.
mean. Yeah. But
They're vicious little teddy bear things.
they're so cute.
Yeah, adorable, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think what I liked is, finally, as you mentioned, Liz, that Luke finally almost just gets confirmation of what he already knew. And, the whole relationship between like him and Leia and, that whole thing. I thought it was a great way to end the trilogy. It was a perfect third movie, and I would have been happy if that's how it ended, but that's not how Star Wars ended. No, it's still not over. For goodness sake, we're still going.
I know.
But some fun facts. So the guy who played the Emperor, Ian McDiarmid, actually is the same guy who plays or Senator Palpatine, and then eventually he becomes the Emperor in the prequel trilogy as well. So he's the same guy. He's in all 6 movies. Or actually, he's
9.
in 5 movies.
Well, there's 9 movies.
I know, but he's not in the
He's not in the
ones.
first 2.
He's in episodes 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So that's pretty impressive. And didn't look like he aged a day, if you want my opinion.
All right, I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna have to go see who in the hell played him in this one then.
And then the one of the Ewoks is Warwick Davis, which, if you don't know who he is in the Harry Potter films. And he was 11 years old playing an Ewok. So that's pretty cool.
He's actually in episode 9 as well.
Okay, there you go.
As Emperor Palpatine.
He's just going to keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, I was like, wait a second, then who the hell played him in this one?
Actually, like, speaking of Ian McDiarmid, I don't remember what interview this was, but I remember reading that he had commented on how at the time he was doing the original trilogy, he felt like, oh, I'm way too young for this role. But then as the character kept showing up in the other movies and he felt like, actually, you know what, now like I'm actually the age that I should really be to play this character as time goes on. Which I thought was interesting observation on his part. Oh yeah, and speaking of Ewoks, like what you were saying earlier, another bit of trivia I read somewhere was that the reason why the Ewoks look like the way they do was it was intentional. They were intentionally designed to be kind of teddy bear looking because of merchandising purposes. Merchandising, folks, merchandising. That's what all
It's
money
all
is.
about money. All about money. Always. And if anyone does follow the Star Wars line, this movie takes place 5 years prior to the Disney Plus show The Mandalorian, which we'll get into
Another day.
another day, not today. Let's see, any other fun trivia that we can add here?
Oh yeah, one other thing. This was like a few years ago now, but I actually had watched on PBS this interesting documentary about the famous Japanese director Akira Kurosawa, and I was actually a little surprised that George Lucas was one of the people that they interviewed for the documentary. And the reason why they interviewed him was because bits of Japanese culture actually influenced Star Wars. Like it's been pointed out that if you look at the design of Darth Vader's costume, especially the helmet, you'll notice that it's very similar to traditional samurai armor, actually. And also some of the filming techniques that got used in the original trilogy, like some of the scenes, the way it's like composed, etc. There was like inspiration from Akira Kurosawa movies, especially like his famous samurai movies, like Seven Samurai, etc. So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
Two little things of trivia. So many people consider that J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings actually may have been a huge influence on the Star Wars saga. And I guess one of the ways that they feel this is because the final installment of The Lord of the Rings is titled The Return of the King, and this is Return of the Jedi. So I can kind of see some similarities. Obviously it's not exact mirror, but thinking about it, I actually can see some similarities between the two. And then actually this film was actually considered by a lot of fans and critics the worst out of the three of the original trilogy. So can't please everybody. Just saying.
No. I don't know. I thought it was pretty. I don't know. This trilogy personally was better than the other two that have come out since then, in my opinion. But I don't think this was the worst of the three of the. For me, probably as much as I like the first film, it's probably, to me, I feel like it's the weakest of the three.
Right. Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. The first movie was good, but it's just that compared to the other two, it felt like it's not as good, mainly because the plot for the first movie is very it's like it's kind of basic almost, because you have Luke as the plucky young hero character type who meets, the mercenary, rebellious, not taking things seriously, greedy guy type. And then they're off to rescue the princess, and then they have to stop the evil empire, and then they save the day. I mean, that's kind of the summary, very basic summary of the first movie. so it's not a very complex story or anything like that. And
Yeah, I feel like it's almost like just like an introductory, which it is. You know, you learn the who, the what, the where, and the why.
yeah,
Pretty much.
Basically.
yeah, I mean, it's like a very basic, like when you like break it down, it's basically a very basic adventure story, which isn't to say that's a bad thing necessarily, but it's just not like very it doesn't take much time to grasp, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not as much action, which people like action. Really, in that movie, the action comes at the end, where the other two, it's kind of like right away.
Right.
So, but yeah, like I said, can't please everybody.
Yeah.
But no, like I mentioned before, out of all of the Star Wars, the original three are definitely my favorites. I always tend to be like an original fan, because that's what you learn first. So I thoroughly enjoyed this trilogy. I thought that the casting was perfect, as I mentioned before. The dynamic between Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford is amazing. They did such a great job with these characters, and yeah, I just thought it was overall really good. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so you got me. I'm a nerd. Woohoo.
Same.
And I'm
Yeah.
proud of it, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one final thing is that when you actually watch the three movies, like whether you want to marathon them or you want to, do like a break in between the movies to kind of digest it a bit, you can kind of tell how they didn't really plan out the sequels initially, because there's some like continuity disconnects a little bit between episode 4 and episode 5. Not just tonally, but it's like just little details, like, why would you hint at potentially, the hero, plucky hero and the damsel potentially having a relation, like a romantic relationship tension thing. But then later on in the movies, you find out that they're actually twins, which is bizarre.
And gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which to me kind of tells me that George Lucas, when he wrote the first movie, he wasn't really thinking about sequels per se, despite his claims in interviews later that, oh yeah, I had some ideas for like expanding the story. Well, I mean, I don't know about that, because there's that disconnect, like I was just saying, in some of the details like that. Because like, I mean, to be honest, I suspect that even he wasn't sure that this movie would be successful, but then it turned out to be one of the big blockbusters of the year, and people were pretty much clamoring for a sequel because the ending is an ending, but it's open-ended enough to lead to more adventures, and that's when I suspect that's when he had to really start thinking about, well, what would be the sequel? What more stories would we have to tell after the first movie? So
I guess we'll never truly know, since he won't, or never admitted anything. So, but that you make a good point. You do make a good point, because I mean, you think about it, you don't really learn that they're siblings until the last movie. The second movie is when you learn that there's definitely a connection somewhere. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
good point.
Yep.
All right. Anything left to add? All right. Last thing, as we've started mentioning, we do have an email that you can reach out to us. It's 3fatesdecide at gmail.com, which is the name of our podcast. 3 is spelt out. And we also have an Instagram, which is 3fatesdecide. Again, spelt out. So check us out, email, comment, let us know what you think, what you want to, if you want us to talk about anything specific. If you have any criticisms, we accept all. So we thank you guys so much for listening. So we do want to hear what you have to say. So feel free to reach out to us.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Catch us next time.
And see what we're going to talk about.
Because the three fates decide.